Welcome to King Lizard's Game Lounge and my review for Slightly Mad Studios Project Cars 2. In this case I'm playing on Xbox One, and in this video I'm going to compare the original Project Cars with Project Cars 2, as well as some of the other racing game franchises out there. Now, I've actually been dying to play this game. I pre-ordered it months ago and have been really looking forward to its release. So upon opening the game, I thought, okay, am I going to have the same nightmare that I had with the original Project Cars? If you're like me and you bought the game originally and you didn't own a steering wheel setup and you tried to play that game with a controller, it was a nightmare. It took me 6 hours to get a working controller configuration, and that didn't even work for every car. Reality was, with Project Cars, unfortunately a lot of its issues weren't fixed until well after a year of its release, which was way too late. A lot of people, had a bad taste in their mouth at that point and just were never going back to that game. Project Cars 2 obviously has raised interest in anyone that likes driving games, and as a result, are some people going to take the same gamble they did with Project Cars? And if they did, is it worth their while? Well, initially, when I opened this game, the first thing I did was jump into Formula Rookie, because I figured if there's a car I'm going to be able to drive, that's it, or a vehicle I'm going to be able to drive, that's it. And Formula Rookie was pretty controllable with a controller, as were a number of other vehicles I jumped into. Some of the GT3 and GT5 vehicles, for instance, the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis, were working quite nicely with a controller, as were things like the LMPs. However, the minute I started to get deeper into that car list and start to choose different vehicles, the more and more vehicles I exposed were actually pretty difficult to handle with a controller. Some of the cars definitely work okay with a controller, some of them are a little bit on the twitchy side, and some of them are just downright impossible out of the box to control. So, slightly better than the original game, but still a lot of room for improvement in terms of out-of-the-box functionality for your general gamer. Now, at this point, I've probably got a whole bunch of fanboys screaming at me, it's a simulator. I know it's a simulator, but at the end of the day, so is Assetto Corsa. I can drive Assetto Corsa out of the box with a controller with every vehicle. Why can I not do that with Project Cars? There's no excuse. Yes, I appreciate it's a simulation game at heart, but at the same time, if it's being released on a console, the cars should be controllable with a controller. They simply have to divide the gameplay into two different control methods. One for your generic players on console, and one for the people that want to get deeper and play with simulation. Now, going on to simulation, there are a horrendous number of settings in this game for setting up your steering wheel, also configuring every single car. You can have a car set up for every single track. It's got horrendous amounts of detail in it, and if you're a simulation player and you like to spend your time or hours setting up cars before you actually get around to drive on a track, then this is going to be a game for you. It's a big improvement on Project Cars. The settings are immense compared to the original, and in terms of selection, obviously there's 60 plus tracks in here, some really nice tracks, and also there are a lot more vehicles. We got over twice the vehicles of the original game, and there's some really interesting choices in here. But as a simulation game, this is a winner. It really is a nice game. The tracks that were, let's say, a little bit bland in the original Project Cars and didn't really feel as alive as they should have, actually feel a lot better in this game. Tracks like Nuremberg feel, you really feel kind of the dips and the turns in the road more so than you did in the original Project Cars, as are a whole bunch of the other tracks in the game, like Watkins Glen feels a lot better than it did before. Originally it felt very kind of flat. Now it kind of feels a lot livelier and a lot more realistic of a track. There are a number of different ways that you can enjoy your driving experience in Project Cars. The first being the game's career mode. I actually prefer this game's career mode because it's not looking at blank calendar pages, which I found quite frustrating in the original. In this case, you can clearly see what you're doing straight away, and how many races and how many laps and stuff you're going to be doing. You can also configure the career to your liking, so you can have a shorter version of the career or a longer version of the career, which includes more tracks and more laps. You can even configure laps in the career to shorten your experience if that's what you want to do in order to get achievements out of the way and then get to racing multiplayer online once you've learnt some of the tracks. Custom race is another way to play the game. I really like the custom race mode in terms of its configuration. There is a lot you can configure in custom mode. You can go up to crazy number of laps, different weather variants, up to 2 different weather variants while you're driving around the track. You can also have mixed classes or same class events and choose any of those 60 plus tracks in the game and any of the car classes. So really rich custom race experience. Next up is multiplayer. Now, I spent an inordinate amount of time trying, and I'll emphasize the word trying, to get into multiplayer matches or even configure my own lobbies. I was unable within the first 5 days of release of this game to configure my own multiplayer lobby. It did not work. Every time I tried to set a lobby up, the game went into limbo and never returned. That said, I then went onto the servers to try and find other lobbies because my friends also had the same experience I did. They too were unable to set up lobbies, so as a result all we could do was look at the available races online and join one of those. Now, in joining those races, I intermittently kept getting dropped from the server. One perfect example was I managed to do a 15-minute qualify to be dropped at the minute the event went live for the main race. Extremely frustrating. And over the 5 days of initial release of this game, I tried many times to get into multiplayer lobbies with around 25% success, and then even once I did join, occasionally I did get dropped by the server. So a lot of wasted time and a lot of frustration with multiplayer. Definitely out of the box, multiplayer is broken, and if that's how you want to play this game, you're going to be mightily disappointed at the moment. And finally, the game's 2 time trial oriented modes. You have the community events mode, which sees you pitting yourself against the community to get the best possible times in community events, of which there are currently 4 at the moment for release, and also the game's generic time trial mode, where it sees you competing against various different car classes across a variety of different tracks and trying to get the best time in the world. Project Cars 2 also sees the introduction of a race director, so this is basically your engineering team that you can communicate with to try and find out what's wrong with your car and how you might improve it. For me, it's more race director very light than it is race director. I think it's a good idea, but it's not implemented very deeply, and as a result its value, I think, is quite limited at this point. For a game like Project Cars 2, I'd expect something a lot more intricate and a lot more detailed for people trying to get assistance when tuning vehicles and stuff. The game's AI do leave something to be desired at times. Sometimes they can kind of be okay, but other times they can be infuriating. So for instance, if you slow down and misjudge a corner and put your brakes on just that little bit too heavy, the AI drives straight through you and takes you off track and writes off your car in the process if you have full damage on, like I was playing. On top of that, if you, for instance, are in the snow, or you start in the snow or the rain, and you try to gain traction at the beginning of the race to leave the grid, before you can get off, I was finding I was getting driven through by 5 or 6 cars before I could even get my car under control, by which time it was written off on the side of the road. The cars, or the AI cars, didn't even have the intelligence to drive around my vehicle. Another thing was with high-speed crashes on IndyCar or even NASCAR, a vehicle typically would spin out within the first corner and cause mayhem from the AI perspective, which I would have to dodge. However, the AI vehicles made no attempt at all to slow down. They simply ploughed through the accident. Another example of bad AI was the Formula Rookie series I did in Korea. In one race on Sonoma, I had to replay the race 4 times because my own AI teammate kept locking wheels with me several laps round and ripping my wheels off. Very frustrating stuff indeed. So I personally think the AI in this game is mediocre at best. Onto the crash model. Obviously I was talking about crashes just now. Crashes in this game look spectacular, but also they can look pretty ridiculous. A couple of examples of which you can see in the video here. This one in particular, where I kind of landed up with this GT supercar on top of my hood. In addition to that, I also had a scenario where I tapped, and I mean really tapped, a Formula Rookie vehicle, and it kind of did this 3 foot in the air bunny hop for no reason whatsoever. It was very strange. And I've also had a scenario where I hit a muscle car coming over the bridge at Brannock Bay, and the muscle car flew over the top of my fiberglass car at 30 miles an hour, which was pretty ridiculous as well. It's almost like these vehicles just turn to paper once they're in an accident. The accident model, as I said, I do love it to bits, the way it just decimates the vehicles you saw just there, but at the same time the physics just aren't right. It's like all of a sudden the car becomes this weightless object the minute there's an impact. From a weather perspective, the actual dynamics of the weather and how they affect the track are very impressive in Project Cars 2. On top of that, also the effect of the rain in your vehicle in the various views, or even in the replays, in most cases, actually looks pretty cool. The weather system, however, in this game is not as strong as Forza Motorsport 7, although Forza Motorsport 7, of course, doesn't have the snow variant that I'm aware of. The snow variant obviously is a new thing to Project Cars. It originally was around with PGR4, believe it or not, back in 2008, I believe, was when that was released, and those guys had snow, and it was actually really well done. So this is the first time I've seen snow return to anything that isn't a rally game, and these guys do a pretty good job of translating it, not just in terms of the way it looks in the car, but also how it affects the track and stuff. So quite a nice weather system, and definitely an improvement on the first game. Project Cars 2 also features a photo mode that is comparable to the likes of Forza Horizon or even Forza Motorsport. However, photo mode is bugged. I was trying to create some thumbnails for videos that I'm putting together for the channel using a race replay. Now, I could take the photograph, I could save it, but when I backed out of photo mode, the game went into a state where I just couldn't get back to the game's main menu, and the only thing left for me to do was to quit the game. Now, upon quitting the game, I lost all of my progress, which meant, of course, that I lost an entire race and had to redo that race afterwards. Unfortunately, this was one of many game-breaking bugs that I experienced during my release weekend playthrough of Project Cars 2. Some of the more serious issues I saw resulted in me having to kill the game and go back in many times in order to get back into the racing action, which obviously just wasted a lot of time and eventually just became too frustrating to endure. Now, another scenario I saw was this one, where, for instance, parts of vehicles colliding in front of you, debris would land up on your vehicle many times on the windscreen, preventing you from seeing where you're going, and as a result you had to quit the race and restart. The other issue I saw, which was pretty bad, obviously, as I said, it was very frustrating getting into multiplayer over that release weekend, and to get into multiplayer finally and then have no game sound is even more annoying, and this happened at least 3 times to me on the very few occasions I did get into multiplayer. The other issue I saw was in free play, and I saw this a lot, where you are racing and you overtake 10 cars on a circuit, and then all of a sudden it's like your car is gutless and like the entire game is in slow motion, and there is nothing you can do about this. Once it happens, you have to kill the game and start all over again. Extremely frustrating. Not kidding, that happened to me 20 times over the course of race weekend, and unfortunately it was the icing on the cake for me in terms of me playing Project Cars 2. It kind of drove me to the edge, to the point where I basically had enough, and as a result I got my money back off of Microsoft, because I felt that there were just too many problems with this game to enjoy it. Having said that, there's still a massive part of me that loves the look and the ideas and the concepts of Project Cars 2. It's very much a game that I desire to be able to play, and as a result I can definitely see myself returning to this in hopefully 6 months or sooner, once a lot of the kinks are ironed out. Graphically, this game is very good. I would say it's only superseded by Forza Motorsport 7, but not in every aspect. I think this game definitely has better track dynamics and also a better, more realistic looking track. Project Cars 2 by far has the best crash dynamics of any game that I've seen on current PC or console. Overall, I'd have to kind of put 2 scores on this game, purely because there are 2 types of gamers that are going to purchase this. There are gamers that are going to want to play something out of the box, in which case I would award this title a 5 out of 10, purely because it is really, a large proportion of it out of the box as a console player is unplayable. You're going to have to spend inordinate amounts of time to get the cars configured and tuned, and there wasn't any easy way that I could see to acquire tunes from the community in the game, which is a shame, because it would have been a nice shortcut to be able to play the game easily without too many headaches. There are going to be a lot of people out there that work hard and they get very little game time, and as a result, when they buy a game, they want to be able to jump straight in and play it, and Project Cars 2 for the most part is not going to allow them to do that, hence my score 5 out of 10. If you're a simulator player, this is an extremely rich title, and if you're the kind of person who wants to invest a lot of time into getting the right car setups and getting the best drive possible out of these vehicles, this is the game for you. It's much better than Project Cars. It's a massive improvement on the original, and there is a lot to like and love about it. Plus, there's twice what we had in the original title, as well as a deep level of configuration from a device input perspective and from a custom race perspective. But unfortunately, this game still has a lot of problems for my liking, and from a simulation perspective, I award Project Cars 2 a 7 out of 10. If they get these bugs ironed out in the next few months, this has a potential of a 9 out of 10 game, but right now for me, 7 out of 10 is the most I'm going to award it. I hope you've enjoyed the review. Please be kind enough to leave me some feedback and comments if you've got anything to say about the review. It'd be much appreciated. In the meantime, please also rate the video and subscribe if you're not already a subscriber and you enjoyed it. Take care, keep well, keep watching, and come back soon.